This is the product that I think a lot of us entrepreneurs need to be using to help you to get more done, to be a better writer, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So do you remember like the conversation you had when you first had the idea, or who you were talking to, or when that situation, or was it more like a lot of conversations over time is where the idea kind of sprouted up from?
It was one specific conversation with a friend of mine named Patrick, who ended up being my co-founder. He was telling me about some software that he used to help him stay focused while writing. And so he's a software developer. He liked to write essays in his free time about political subjects or whatever he wanted to write about. And he was telling me about some specific software that not only did it like block out distractions, but it actually disabled the backspace key. And I just was like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you do that? And it was just so frame breaking that you would want to write with something that was purposefully limited. And so he educated me on a writing process that I never heard of, which is write first and edit later. And so you do your drafting process in a separate session than editing. You don't edit as you go. And that way you can kind of optimize for the creative portion and the critical portion. And so I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't believe that I never heard about this before. How come nobody told me this like when I was expressing writing in school? Exactly. Like, it was so painful for me and so many others, of course, like to be writing in high school, writing these essays or learning about these like 5-paragraph things. And so I was just like, wow, there's another process out there. I wish I learned about this. And so that conversation is what got the idea going. And then even in that same conversation, I sort of put the pieces together of like the hardware components. And that's just, that's the weird part about me is that
Engineer side, yeah.
Yeah, that's the engineer side, right? And so, I'm thinking like, I've been reading about mechanical keyboards. They're really cool. They're very niche. I love my Kindle. I'm like obsessed with the Kindle, and I have been for years and years and years. I give them out as gifts to everyone that I can find. If I hear that you don't have a Kindle, then I just buy you one.
You might have this.
I just think it's one of the best products ever made. And yeah, just kind of like, it just formed in my head. I'm like, oh, Kindle screen, mechanical keyboard. Oh, we need to like be able to get the documents out. We'll sync it to the cloud, and then it was like those 3 components, which was the essence of it. And I'm like, okay, if my friend is using this software to kind of dumb down his super expensive laptop for this very specific writing experience, maybe we can just make a dedicated thing that's just for that. And it's not really dumbing it down per se, but it's like a tailored experience just for this drafting portion of the writing process. And yeah, that was it.
Interesting. When I first discovered you guys, it was actually through one of my friends, and I've written 3 books. I can't remember where it was in my writing journey, but somewhere when I had that realization of like, the reason why I write so slow is because I'm writing, creative brain writing, and then flipping to like left brain editing and back and forth. And then I was sort of getting a flow and things like that. And I found that the times I got the most and the best writing was when I was stuck on an airplane, where like I couldn't research, I couldn't Google, I was just there, and it was uncomfortable. So like I would just write and write. I'm like, oh, I'll figure out how to edit this later. And I write, and then I get to the hotel or whatever that night, and I open up, and then all of a sudden all of the you spell check correct things would pop up because they weren't there when you have no internet access,
Right.
all the red squigglies, and I edited it all. And I was like, oh, and I was telling my friend this, I'm like, I found out like for me to be the most, like to write really good, like I have to like not edit. And he was like, oh dude, have you ever heard of the Freewrite? I'm like, no, what's that? And he started telling me, and he's kind of an artsy guy. So he was just like, oh, it's this most beautiful thing. It's like this typewriter. And he's like, tell me the art of it. And then, and I remember he's like, I want one. I'm trying to save up to get one. So I remember Googling it that night, and I saw it, and I was like, whoa. And so I bought it right out of the gate, and it showed up, a week later. And then I showed him, he's like, you got one? I'm like, well, you sold me on it. I had to try it now. And so that's why I first got introduced to it, because I'd found that same problem in my own writing. And then all of a sudden you had created this interesting, beautiful, different solution for it, you know what I mean? Because I was kind of going down the same path. I'm assuming your co-founder did, like we could do this with software. Maybe there's some software I could buy to do this, but I hadn't really figured out a process yet when I found this. I'm actually kind of curious. Obviously you're more of the engineer side, but there are people that have created software for similar things. Like, how did you beat out your co-founder, where he's software, your physical product, in the debate to actually decide to go this direction? Was there a debate about it, or was just kind of, let's do it together?
No, there was no debate about it. He also liked the idea of having a dedicated tool. I think there's a hidden benefit of having something dedicated is that like your brain is triggered based on its environment, right? So when you have this device in front of you, your brain subconsciously knows, oh, this is like my writing device, right? And unfortunately, like our computers they actually work against us in that way, because this is like, it could be whatever's in your mind, right? Because your computer can do anything. It's like, oh, there was that YouTube video that I really wanted to check out, or like, I really need to check my email, or there's these pictures that need edit. There's just this constant stream of temptation that your computer brings. And so there's no pure association. And so that's part of the problem with trying to work at your computer, and also something that we very easily solve because it's a product that's only designed to do one thing. And so it's a bit of a mind trick, the whole product, right? Because you can do everything on this product on a laptop, but somehow everybody that uses it, they tell us, like we get these reviews all the time. I'm writing twice as much as I used to. I don't understand how this works. Why am I enjoying writing again? This is incredible. And again, it's just a bit of a mind trick. It's funny that you have to like buy one of these, but it does work. And no, I mean, my co-founder was happy to get involved, and he wrote the original software for the product. But yeah, I mean, part of what makes it work is that it's an actual physical dedicated product that's separate from your computer.
Yeah. I also think it's like, I don't know, I collect old books, and I'm obsessed with like I feel like I should have been born in the 20s, back when writing was on typewriters and stuff like that. Like I've collected some of my favorite authors, like I own their typewriters now. But there was something like when I got this first one and like also sitting down and typing, I was just like, oh, I feel like the romance of writing, does that make sense? Like I felt like I was actually writing versus on my keyboard where we're doing whatever, you know what I mean? It felt different, which for me, that became really fun too. Cause it's just like, oh, I feel like I'm in that zone of like, I'm a writer now, not just like someone who's on a computer who's trying to write something,
Yeah. See, it tricked you too. Worse.
Yeah, it totally did. I want to ask you some questions on the business side of this. So you guys created this very first one, and I'm curious, again, I've never made a physical product. Actually, I lie. I made my very first physical product. It's like a magazine holder from China, and I had to go and get these molds built, and then they poured them. And it was like a year-long process for me to get this little plastic thing that holds a magazine. So that's the only thing physical I've ever actually created. I'm looking at this, I'm like, how do you know where to start? How does it, like, what was the process to create the very first prototype to be able to go and eventually, I think you did a Kickstarter campaign to launch it, but like, how do you actually create the first one? Like, what's the steps in that process? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways of going about it, for sure. There's sort of one process where you can take advantage of existing designs and maybe tweak them a little bit here and there. Or there's sort of the ground up design it yourself bit. We did the latter. And effectively what you do is you go to a contract manufacturer. In our case, we went to, some of the big consumer electronics manufacturers in South Asia, where most consumer electronics are made. And you develop a relationship and ask them for quotations. And of course, you actually do the engineering first. So there's several different kind of core aspects that go into our products. There's mechanical design, electrical design, software, and firmware. You kind of need at least a person or someone with multiple skill sets to do each of those things and be responsible for them. Yeah, I mean, that's what engineers do, right? So each one of those major components, they also have to work together. The designs together. You start working with a contract manufacturer. You get feedback from them, and you kind of just go from there.
So cool. So do you create just one first, or you build the pieces and they build a whole bunch at first, or what does that look like?
The tricky thing with hardware is that you can't make one without all of the pieces. And so each one of the pieces is independently designed, sampled, tested, verified, but you can't assemble the whole thing and actually have a working unit until you have 100% of the components. There's a lot of different things that have to line up basically and to get that working. And so, but essentially it's like you validate your design and the engineering, and then you put the whole thing together. You make 50, you make 300, then you go for mass production, something like that.
That's cool.